How did King David die? One of the greatest kings in history, a warrior, a poet, and a man after God's own heart, lying on his deathbed, frail and unable to stay warm. But here's the mystery. The Bible doesn't tell us exactly how King David died. Was it old age, a hidden illness, or something more sinister? Stick around as we explore 10 shocking theories about King David's death. Some will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. 1. Poisoning. Let's start with a theory that sounds like it's straight out of a thriller. Poisoning. Some historians speculate that David might have been slowly poisoned. Why? Because royal courts in ancient times were hotbeds of power struggles. Remember Adonijah's attempted coup in 1 Kings 1? He tried to take the throne before Solomon could. If someone wanted to weaken David's influence, poisoning could have been the perfect silent weapon. While there's no direct biblical evidence, ancient politics were ruthless. Kings often faced betrayal from those closest to them. Could David have been a victim of a slow-acting poison? It's a chilling thought, and though it's purely speculative, it's a fascinating angle to consider. What do you think? Could David have been poisoned? Let me know in the comments. 2. Cultural practices and end-of-life care. Now, let's talk about life in ancient Israel. Medical care back then was nothing like what we have today. The elderly relied heavily on family and servants for basic needs. In 1 Kings 1, we see David in his final days, frail and unable to stay warm even under blankets. This paints a picture of a man completely dependent on others. Without modern medicine, even minor health issues could become life-threatening. David's decline might have been accelerated by the lack of proper care. Imagine living in a time with no antibiotics, no painkillers, and no understanding of diseases. It's no wonder that many people didn't live to a ripe old age. Could this have been a factor in David's death? Absolutely. 3. Died of old age and natural causes. Here's the most widely accepted theory. David simply died of old age. The Bible says in 1 Kings 2:10, "Then David rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David." It's a peaceful image, right? But let's dig deeper. Earlier, in 1 Kings 1, we're told that David couldn't stay warm, even under blankets. This suggests he was suffering from frailty and possibly circulatory issues, common in old age. His body was simply wearing out after a long and eventful life. While it might not be the most dramatic theory, it's the one the Bible supports. But don't stop watching yet. There are more intriguing possibilities ahead. Before we move on, if you're finding this video fascinating, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're on a mission to reach 100,000 subscribers this year, and your support means the world to us. Now let's get back to the mystery. 4. Psychological and emotional decline, leading to physical deterioration. David's life wasn't just physically demanding, it was emotionally exhausting. Think about it. His son Absalom rebelled against him and was killed. His first child with Bathsheba died as a consequence of his sin. And let's not forget the family turmoil like Amnon's assault of Tamar and the resulting bloodshed. It's possible that David's body simply couldn't handle the weight of his emotional suffering. Have you ever been so stressed that you felt physically ill? Imagine that on a king-size scale. 5. Congestive heart failure, CHF or stroke. Now let's get medical for a moment. David's inability to stay warm in 1 Kings 1. One could point to poor circulation, a classic symptom of congestive heart failure, CHF. CHF causes fluid retention, swelling, and fatigue. Given David's age and the stress he endured, it's a plausible explanation. Alternatively, he might have suffered a stroke. Strokes can cause sudden weakness, speech issues, or cognitive decline. If David had a stroke, it could explain his rapid deterioration. Either way, his symptoms align with what we know about heart disease and strokes today. Could this have been the cause of his death? It's definitely possible. Okay, we're halfway through and I know what you're thinking. How many ways could one man die? But trust me, the next theories are even more intriguing. Don't go anywhere. This is where it gets really interesting. 6. Kidney failure or severe dehydration. As people age, their kidneys often become less efficient. If David had a long-term illness or something like diabetes, kidney failure could have set in. Symptoms like fatigue, fluid buildup, and chills, which match his inability to stay warm, could point to a renal issue. On top of that, if David wasn't eating or drinking enough, dehydration could have worsened his condition. Ancient diets weren't exactly balanced, and medical treatment was limited. It's heartbreaking to think that something as simple as dehydration could have played a role in his death. 7. A slow-acting infection, sepsis or tuberculosis. Here's another medical possibility, a slow-acting infection. Diseases like tuberculosis, TB, cause progressive weakness and weight loss. Or David could have had a chronic bacterial infection that led to sepsis. In ancient times, even a minor infection could become fatal without antibiotics. Imagine David battling an infection for months, growing weaker and weaker. It's a grim thought, but it's a realistic scenario given the lack of medical knowledge back then. Could an infection have been the silent killer? It's definitely worth considering. 8. Depression-induced decline. David's life was marked by immense emotional suffering. He lost multiple sons, including Absalom and Amnon, in tragic and violent circumstances. He faced betrayal from those closest to him, like his trusted advisor Ahithophel, who sided with Absalom during the rebellion. On top of that, he endured a lifetime of wars, exile, and the heavy burden of leadership. The cumulative trauma of these experiences could have led to severe depression, a condition that would have been just as debilitating in ancient times as it is today. Depression isn't just a mental health issue. It can manifest physically, causing symptoms like loss of appetite, chronic fatigue, and a weakened immune system. For David, the weight of grief, guilt, and loneliness could have taken a toll on his body, accelerating his decline. Combine that with the natural frailty of old age, and it's easy to see how depression could have indirectly contributed to his death. It's a sobering reminder of how deeply emotional pain can affect the body, showing that even a king as mighty as David wasn't immune to the consequences of a broken heart. 9. A worn-out warrior effect, post-traumatic stress and battle fatigue. David was a warrior from his youth. He fought lions, bears, Goliath, the Philistines, and even his own people. The physical toll of countless battles, possibly injuries, untreated wounds, or internal damage could have worn his body down over time. Imagine the strain of leading armies, enduring long campaigns, and surviving close combat. Even the strongest warriors have their limits, and David's body may have simply reached its breaking point after decades of relentless stress and physical exertion. Today we understand post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and how prolonged stress can weaken the body. David's life was filled with trauma, losing sons, facing betrayal, and carrying the weight of leadership. The constant emotional and psychological strain could have contributed to chronic health issues, accelerating his decline. After years of war, political turmoil, and personal loss, David may have succumbed to a combination of stress-related illness and the natural effects of aging. Think of it as the worn-out warrior effect, a lifetime of battles leaving him physically and emotionally drained. Could this have been David's fate? It's a compelling theory that connects the dots between his tumultuous life and his eventual decline. 10. Divine intervention. God simply took him peacefully. Finally, let's end on a theological note. Some believe that God allowed David to pass peacefully as an act of mercy. Unlike Saul, who died in disgrace on the battlefield, David was able to prepare Solomon for the throne and leave behind a legacy of worship, wisdom, and a kingdom that would endure. Think about it. David's life was far from perfect. He made mistakes, faced consequences, and endured immense suffering. Yet, in his final days, he was surrounded by loved ones, able to bless his son Solomon and ensure a smooth transition of power. His death wasn't marked by chaos or betrayal, but by peace and purpose. This perspective reminds us that even in death, God's hand was at work. David's life was a testament to God's faithfulness, and his peaceful passing reflects the fulfillment of God's promises. It's a beautiful reminder that no matter how tumultuous our lives may be, God's grace can bring us to a place of rest and completion. So, what do you think? Was David's death a divine moment orchestrated by God at the perfect time, or do you see it as simply the natural end of a long and eventful life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And there you have it, 10 theories about how King David might have died. Which one do you find the most convincing? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We're aiming for 100,000 subscribers this year, and your support helps us grow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.